I bought a car worth 100 grand with some old man's money just after my husband's funeral. Ashley and I were mentally and physically exhausted, yet Julia said this with glee. David was happily looking at the contract Julia had brought. Whose money are you talking about? What on earth is going on? I couldn't help but raise my voice in frustration. Despite the fact that Ashley and I were mourning the loss of my husband, our eldest son and his wife seemed not only unbothered but even pleased. The insurance money will be deposited, right? Plus, there should be an inheritance. Out of Julia's bag came, unbelievably, my husband's bank book. Seeing that, I burst into laughter. What's so funny? You're planning to use that to buy. I feel sorry for you because that bank book. My words, spoken between gasps of laughter, turned the faces of our eldest son and his wife pale. My name is Amanda Simpson. I was married to Chris and blessed with 2 children. Our eldest daughter Ashley and our eldest son David. Chris's family has been a line of doctors for generations. Both my father-in-law and mother-in-law have medical licenses. Chris had also been working hard since childhood to become a doctor. Drawn to Chris's hardworking and admirable character, which I got to know through a friend's introduction, we became a couple. Seeing Chris's dedication, our daughter Ashley also decided to pursue a career in medicine. Although Ashley wasn't necessarily academically gifted, she was diligent every day. As her mother, I was there to witness her efforts up close. I didn't force her to become a doctor. However, Chris was really pleased when she decided to become one by her own will. Mom, I got an A rating for the medical university. When she got an A rating from her dream university in high school, I couldn't help but shed tears at her success. No, it's not an acceptance yet. I still have to work hard without letting my guard down. I was genuinely happy to see her grow up to be such a kind and resilient person. But David, our eldest son, was quite the opposite. Born prematurely, David had always been frail, and I admit I might have been overprotective of him. But as David grew up, he got stronger and eventually caught up with his peers in physique. Without attending any cram school, he consistently scored perfect marks in elementary school tests. He grew up wonderfully, which was reassuring. However, the latter half of his middle school years, David started coming home with bruises every day. David, what happened to you? Those injuries. I was concerned, but David started to ignore me. They looked like bruises from fights. Maybe he got into some scuffles. He's a boy, after all. There are times like these. It's kind of a good thing in a way that he's grown up to stand up for himself. As long as he's not causing trouble for others, let him be, Chris said with a laugh. In hindsight, I should have listened to Chris and left things to some extent. However, my overprotective nature towards David made me anxious. I constantly questioned him about the fights and who hurt him, which drove him away. You're so annoying. If you ask me one more time, I'll never speak to you again. Indeed, despite Chris's advice, I kept pushing. After David's stern warning, I reflected and stopped prying. But every time one bruise healed, another appeared. All I could do was watch over him with worry. While David was certainly academically talented, he ended up spending most of his time fighting and went to a local public high school. I hoped that after he outgrew his teenage years, David would discuss his future or college plans, but he remained unchanged. Hey madam, give me some money, he demanded rudely one day. If you think acting like a delinquent makes you cool, you're gravely mistaken, Ashley retorted. Huh? What did you say? David snapped back, and it seemed like a fight was about to break out. The thought of Ashley possibly being harmed left me restless. Don't fight, please. Here, is this for lunch money? I quickly took a $50 note from my wallet and handed it to David. He clicked his tongue in annoyance and left, with Ashley glaring at him. How did it come to this? Did I spoil him too much? Every day I reflected and blamed myself. Even as his classmates began preparing for university entrance exams, David remained unchanged. Chris tried to talk to David multiple times out of concern, but David even began hurling abusive words at Chris. Well, he hasn't done anything that would involve the police, Chris would say. He has been picked up for being out late with friends more than once or twice. In the end, David neither found a job nor decided on further studies and just graduated high school. David, what are you going to do? You can do well if you study. Isn't it better to go to college now? I'm not saying you should become a doctor, but you should get a job. David wouldn't even meet my eyes when I said this. However, a year later, David, who had been jobless and staying at home, approached me. Hey, he said, I thought he might be asking for money again, but when I turned to look at him, David continued, I'm having the kid. I'm getting married. I was left speechless from the shock. David continued, but I'll start working. Can my wife and I live here? Wait, I still don't fully understand the situation. Let's discuss this with your father first. That night, Chris, David, and I had a conversation. We, as parents, came to terms with David's decision to work and his determination to welcome a child and wife. We decided to accept this new family. On the day we were to meet her, Chris, Ashley, and I waited at home. David had gone to fetch her. He's late, isn't he? I remarked. Even after the promised time of 1 o'clock, the two hadn't shown up. We worried that they might have had an accident. We tried reaching out but couldn't get in touch. Contrary to our anxiety, the two casually appeared just before 3. We're back. Wow, this place is massive. It's like a mansion. Oh, nice to meet you. I'm Julia, she said. I was taken aback by the woman David had brought home. Despite claiming to be pregnant, she wore high heels, a short skirt that seemed chilly, and had long, shimmering, pointed nails. In her hand was a plastic bag from a baby goods store, and she greeted us with surprising words. Nice to meet you. I'm David's mother. Really, you're prettier than what David described. Nice to meet you, Amanda. Her behavior lacked any semblance of manners, and I was simply stunned. Where's my room? She asked. Oh, we haven't decided yet, I replied. Okay, I'll just leave the baby stuff in the living room then. With that, Julia entered the house and headed to the living room. She then greeted Chris and Ashley with the same casual tone. The checkout line was so long. Sorry for being late. You all waited, right? Returning to the living room, Julia addressed me, Chris, Ashley, and I could only exchange glances without saying a word. Are you all nervous? Just relax, okay? Chill out. We were simply astounded by her words. We thought today was just a greeting, but Julia came in, placed a ton of luggage in the living room, and acted like she owned the place. Afterward, I greeted Julia again. She was 22 years old and apparently worked part-time at a bar. As a child, her parents divorced and she was raised by her father. However, he later disappeared, and she seems to have grown up in a children's home. I understood it must have been tough without any family, but there are kids who turn out well despite that. I don't think one's circumstances can be an excuse for rudeness. Then Ashley talked to Julia as she discussed her past. How many weeks pregnant are you now? I noticed earlier that you're wearing high heels. Your belly doesn't seem to be showing yet, but it's dangerous. I felt relieved after Ashley kindly said that. Then on Julia's behalf, David spoke up. Right, I thought the same, but Julia apparently only has heeled shoes. Buy her some, madam. Suddenly, the conversation shifted to me, and I was taken aback. Oh, don't be so surprised. You probably don't know my taste, right? If you give me money, I'll choose for myself. I was at a loss for words at Julia's lack of hesitation. Ashley shouted at the two of them. Why should Mom buy it? Why don't you, David? But the baby inside me is her grandchild, isn't it? Julia retorted. So what? It's your child? Ashley shot back. Scary. Is this what a sister-in-law is like? Hilarious, Julia said, mocking her. Ashley was furious at that remark, while Chris just kept silent, his mouth shut tight. What kind of attitude is this? She seems to be looking down on us even though we just met. However, we have to live together from now on. It wouldn't be wise to fight now. Over time, I believe her maternal instincts will grow and she'll change. When that time comes, she should naturally stop wearing heels and remove her nails. That's all I can hope for. Ashley, being a doctor, was particularly concerned about Julia's lack of parental awareness and said sharply, Anyway, make sure you earn and buy your shoes before your belly gets large. Also, remove your nails. If you can't get a pulse oximeter on, they'll forcibly remove them. With that, she stormed out of the living room and locked herself in her room. Julia seemed to be mocking Ashley, but then laughed when David said, Don't worry about her. She's just jealous because I got married before her. Then our life together began. Julia went to work but didn't help around the house. She just slept all day on her days off, using her pregnancy as an excuse. David, as he declared, started working but kept quitting after arguments and then looked for other part-time jobs. The constant job changes were quite headache-inducing, but Chris said nothing about David and Julia. It seemed he had given up on them. Then something unexpected happened. With the baby items ready and the birth of our grandchild just a month away, Chris collapsed at the hospital where he worked. Despite immediate treatment, he couldn't be saved. Even with all the challenges, I had hoped for an increase in family members. I never imagined parting with Chris before that. I was so devastated that I couldn't believe it myself, and Ashley supported me. Inspired by Ashley, I tried to act strong and managed to hold the funeral. On the morning of the funeral, I told Julia, "It's fine if you stay at home, Julia. Your belly is large and it must be hard for you." "Really? Okay, I'll stay home," she replied. In our region, it's customary not to let pregnant women attend funerals. Even without that tradition, she was about to give birth, so I said that out of concern. Julia gladly accepted my offer. It was my suggestion, and I was okay with it, but I headed to the funeral feeling a bit uneasy. David, who arrived late, seemed worried about Julia and was texting her. I did warn him once, but since the baby could come at any time, I decided to let it slide, except during the funeral. After the funeral, when I got home, I was exhausted both mentally and physically. In the living room, Ashley and I were discussing dinner in a daze. Julia came down from the second floor and handed some documents to David. "Tired, huh? Did your old man make it to heaven?" she said, laughing. David laughed as well. "Might be hell," he replied. "You guys just came back from the funeral. What are you even saying?" Ashley was furious, but I didn't have the energy to get angry anymore. "Come on, Ashley, just go with it," Julia said, pointing at the documents she had given to David. Ashley and I naturally looked at those papers. "What's that? What do you mean, go with it?" The heat of the moment left us bewildered and concerned. "I used Chris's money to buy a car worth 100 grand, Julia declared, holding up some documents. Ashley and I stared in disbelief while David looked on happily. "Whose money? What on earth are you talking about?" I raised my voice out of frustration. Chris had passed away, and while Ashley and I were grieving, the couple seemed pleased instead of saddened. "We get the insurance money, right? And there should be an inheritance," Julia said, pulling out a bank book from her bag. "Dad's bank book? Julia, did you steal it when we were out?" "That's a rude thing to say. We live together, so it's not stealing. Plus, I learned where the bank book was from David, right, David?" Julia responded defiantly. It seemed David was an accomplice. What a pitiable eldest son he was. I hadn't anticipated this at all. I looked dejectedly at the bank book in Julia's hand. Chris's name was clearly written on it, but upon a closer look, I noticed something odd. When I realized the cause of the inconsistency, I couldn't help but burst into laughter. Once I started laughing, I couldn't stop. It had been a long time since I laughed so hard. Julia frowned at my uncontrollable laughter. "What's so funny? Have you lost your mind, madam?" David hurled insults at me, but I wasn't even mad anymore. All this time, I thought David was smart, but I was wrong. I felt sorry for the foolish couple. "Let's see, you wanted to buy a car, right? Have you signed the contract? Are you going to use that money? I feel sorry for you. Did you see the balance in that bank book?" Upon hearing my words, David hastily took the bank book from Julia and opened it. "What the hell? There's only $3 in here." The couple looked at the bank book in shock. Yes, that bank book was set for closure, and the balance had already been withdrawn. "This is a joke. There's supposed to be an inheritance. Where is it? And the insurance money should be deposited too." David was furious, and Julia echoed him. "Yes, there's an inheritance and insurance money. Both of my parents-in-law passed away early, and Chris had a lot of inherited and accumulated assets. Notably, Chris wasn't just a doctor, he also owned several hospitals. His total assets amounted to $1 million. However, those were assets he had built, not things he owned. Most of his assets have been donated and are now gone. The medical fees he received from patients, he wanted to use them to help other patients." "What? Didn't you know? He made a large donation, and it was in the newspapers." Hearing this, David began to tremble. He never showed interest in family matters and didn't read the newspaper, so his ignorance wasn't surprising. Moreover, the remaining money is managed in an online bank. I can't access it until we complete the inheritance procedures. Anyway, what about the insurance money? When will it be deposited? Julia rushed, grabbing the bank book and approaching me. Ashley, standing next to me, began to laugh. "Don't you know, insurance money is not deposited into the account of the deceased but to the beneficiary's account. It'll be transferred to my account and my mother's," Ashley explained, chuckling. Hearing this, Julia's bank book slipped from her hands. David looked dumbfounded, and Ashley and I exchanged glances, stifling our laughter. "What am I going to do now?" I've already signed contracts, added so many options, and they told me I can't cancel. Mom, please, just this once, lend me some money. David knelt beside the distraught Julia. It had been so long since he called me Mom that it felt unfamiliar, as if a stranger was asking for a favor. I don't know. Figure it out yourselves. I pushed him away coldly. Today, I couldn't forgive the actions of my eldest son and his wife. I'm sure Chris felt the same. Mom, you must be tired. Let's go to bed, Ashley suggested. Yes, I'm not in the mood for dinner either, I added. Ashley and I stood up, ignoring the two who were sweating in the living room, and headed to the bedroom. It seemed that during the funeral, David had been communicating with Julia about a deal. I thought they were concerned about their health, but it seemed the car was more important than their unborn child. In his lifetime, Chris always said he didn't want to leave a single penny to David and Julia. As planned, the insurance money was transferred to Ashley and me. Chris died young, and David, even after starting a family, remained unreliable. Chris had thought about what might happen after his death and even left a will. According to the will, the real estate, most of the remaining cash, and the hospital were left to me. Ashley was nominated as the successor to this hospital and bequeathed his personal investments. David was given a large piece of land in the countryside. As we opened the will and heard its contents, Julia said, "So, can't we sell the land and buy a car?" Listen to the end. I interrupted Julia and continued reading. With that land and some of the cash, take $100,000 for building a house and leave this home. What does that mean? Julia asked in confusion. We were at the probate court. The will has been validated and carries full legal force. It means exactly what it says. You get the land and money to build a house. You should be grateful, but this house should eventually belong to David, the eldest son, right? I replied, looking at Julia as if she was pleading for help. I responded with a smirk. It's what I received. I decide who to give it to. You damn old woman, better start packing your bags when you get home, huh? Julia retorted. By the way, the land that Chris designated for David was about 30 miles away in the mountains. It was indeed vast but mostly untouched woodland. No matter how large the land is, if the construction cost is $100,000, the house built on it would probably be small. I bet David and Julia, who likely had nothing, would have made a fuss about the inheritance. Whether Chris gave them the land with that in mind, I don't know, but I believe Chris created an environment where Ashley and I can live peacefully. Besides, David and Julia shouldn't even have any right to receive anything. They should be grateful for whatever they can get. A few days later, a grandchild was born. Julia's water broke in the middle of the night, and she was immediately taken to the hospital after making a call. However, due to her dropping blood pressure and the hospital being understaffed at night, Julia had to have an emergency C-section. Ashley had repeatedly told her to remove her nail extensions, but she didn't listen. Apparently, the nurse possibly removed them. No, I just got these done 3 days ago. Don't take them off, Julia. Don't move, the amniotic fluid is gushing out. They apparently had a standoff in the middle of the night. From what I heard from Ashley, this confrontation was more challenging than the surgery. I've never had fancy nails like young people do, but it seems like it was painful. It's undoubtedly a case of getting what she deserved, I thought to myself. Julia, who had been saved along with her child, could no longer stand up to Ashley and quickly became docile. She may be upset about the inheritance, but she's no longer acting superior to us. I hope she's grateful that we let her rest for the first month after childbirth, Mom, Ashley said regretfully. Can we stay here? We don't need the land or the money. No, even if you stayed here, you both only earn as much as part-time jobs and don't contribute to household expenses. I replied firmly. David's plea was met with a firm denial from both Ashley and me. Reluctantly, David went to cancel the car purchase, but he was charged a penalty fee of $10,000, which he had to pay from the $100,000 set aside for construction. Whether they were reluctant to move to the countryside or not, they considered selling the land and renting an apartment. However, the rent was too high for David and Julia's salaries, and there were no buyers for the vast woodland. They realized they had no choice but to build a house on it, as stated in the will. Desperately, they started looking for a contractor who could build a house for $90,000, but it wasn't going well. The baby is still young, so I'm letting you all stay here for now. You can leave whenever you want, okay? I told David, who fell silent at my words. A week later, they found a construction company, but all they could afford was a small prefabricated hut. I didn't expect Julia to keep it clean, so even a small house should be fine. I told the couple who were preparing to move. You'll need to decide on daycare, so until you're settled, I can take care of the baby. You both should become independent as parents first. You're taking our child, you monster, Julia exclaimed angrily, but David stopped her. With just my earnings, it's impossible to support the two of them. Let's leave our baby here until things settle. No way, I'll divorce you then, Julia threatened. Even if you do, you still won't have a home, I interjected calmly. It seemed David was finally facing reality, desperately trying to convince the furious Julia. Then don't make it come to that, I said. I didn't say I'd take her away. If you can, take her with you. When I snorted and said this, Julia bit her lip in frustration and quieted down. She must have realized that she had no choice but to temporarily part with her baby. Afterward, the couple quietly packed their things and left. I did feel sorry for the baby, however, having parents like that might not make much difference. Of course, if they changed their ways, it would be best for the baby to be raised by her own parents. But I couldn't help but think that the baby might be happier being raised by Ashley and me. David and Julia, who moved to their new land, contacted us almost every day. If it was about the granddaughter, I was happy to reply. But all they ever asked for was money. When ignored, they sent pictures of bread for dinner. Seeing this, Ashley laughed. Even if they ruin their health, they won't be able to afford medical bills. In the countryside, a car is essential, I commented. They're currently driving a used car they bought for $3,000, which frequently stalls. They might be saying this to gain our sympathy, but they don't know it's just a laughing matter for us, Ashley added. In this situation, they probably won't be able to take their daughter back, I concluded. But as long as we can live with our adorable granddaughter, I think it's okay. When she turned 3, she was very cute, kind, and nothing like David or Julia. She was a hard worker. Ashley bought her a number puzzle, and she eagerly learned numbers and could already read letters. David and Julia are still living day by day, Ashley observed. Occasionally, when they receive pictures of their daughter, they exclaim, "Super cute," as if looking at a stuffed toy. It still seems impossible for the two of them to become parents, I mused. When the granddaughter grows up, I hope she can learn from her parents' mistakes and grow up straight. That's what I think.
Have you ever heard of divorce papers being filed without your consent? I had, but I never thought it would happen to me. I was relieved I divorced someone with no money and sick, until I received such an email while hospitalized from the stress of my husband's infidelity. That email shattered my hopes. As soon as I was discharged, I took what I had in hand and went straight to the bank, determined to make my former husband, an elite bank employee, pay for his betrayal. My name is Courtney, a handmade artist. I was married to Tom for 6 years. We met as colleagues at the bank and were happy together, but things changed in the last 6 months. Tom started coming home late and became glued to his phone. He used to talk inside the house, but then he began going out to his car for calls. Suspecting an affair, I hired a detective agency after much deliberation. It cost some money, but I thought it was worth it for peace of mind. A month after hiring the agency, I found out about Tom's affair. His lover was Michelle, a teller at the same bank. The report included photos of them entering a hotel, kissing on the street, and enjoying meals together. Despite the evidence, I couldn't give up on Tom. I believed his affair was a moment of folly and that he would return to me. I changed my hairstyle, put on makeup, cooked with more effort, and always smiled, but all my efforts went unnoticed. Tom stopped touching his food, which increased my stress. I had resolved not to confront him, but seeing him happily leave the house on the phone every day made it impossible to hold back. "You seem busy lately, getting a lot of calls. Is work so demanding that you need to handle it even after you come home?" "Yeah," he replied. "You quit the bank to marry me after working there for about 2 years, right? You might not understand, but it's a busy season now. It's easy for you, isn't it? No busy season, no earnings, just a leisurely life as a handmade artist." Tom laughed in a way that mocked me. The Tom I knew would never have said such things about my work or laughed at me like that. He used to praise my pieces and support me through late-night work sessions. "You don't have to say it like that. I might not be as busy as you, but I take my work seriously. I'm not living leisurely at all. I don't know how much you're earning, but it's definitely less than me, right? I'm paying half of everything, rent, utilities, living expenses, so that you can live. It's tough being a woman with no earning power. You wouldn't survive if I divorced you." What kind of thing is that to say? I make enough to cover my share, but that's not the point right now. Do you want to divorce me? Unable to control myself after hearing the word divorce from Tom, I started crying uncontrollably. Tom sighed, annoyed, and left the living room, telling me not to cry over every little thing. Tom's attitude towards me grew colder. The next day, he completely ignored me, not even meeting my gaze. Despite the situation, I kept wondering how we could return to being the happy couple we once were. The immense stress led to sleepless nights and spontaneous tears. Unable to bear it alone, I met with my high school friend Sophia for advice. Sophia, still single, was a successful career woman. Tearfully, I shared my feelings with her, feelings I couldn't share with anyone else. Tom is completely infatuated with Michelle. He comes home later and later. I don't know what to do anymore. Do you still love your husband, Courtney? Do you want to get back to how things were before? Sophia asked. I honestly expressed my feelings. It's stupid, but I still love him. I don't want to give up, but everything is so hard. Just then, I started coughing violently and bent over. I've had asthma since before, and it had worsened due to the stress from my relationship with Tom. I took out my inhaler, but I was coughing so much that I couldn't inhale at all. The relentless coughing made me suffer unbearably. Unable to remain seated, I collapsed onto the floor. Courtney, are you okay? Please, someone call an ambulance. Sophia called out desperately, but I couldn't respond and lost consciousness. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. Courtney, thank goodness you're awake. Are you okay? Can you understand me? When I looked toward the voice, I saw Sophia with tears in her eyes. Attempting to speak cautiously, I managed to utter, thanks, despite coughing. Sophia nodded while crying and immediately pressed the nurse call button. The attending doctor arrived and explained that due to the severity of my asthma symptoms, I would need to be hospitalized for about a week. With nothing prepared for a sudden hospitalization, Sophia bought me a hospital admission set from the shop and filled out the necessary paperwork. I tried to inform my husband about my hospitalization, but couldn't reach him. Sophia tried calling Tom's cell phone, but he didn't answer. Considering contacting my workplace, I hesitated, fearing their reaction. Eventually, Sophia helped me draft an email, which she sent on my behalf. Sophia stayed until the end of visiting hours and then left. I drifted in and out of sleep due to the medication, constantly checking for any messages from Tom. The first message from him came at 1:00 a.m. If you're hospitalized, there's nothing I can do. I'm busy with work, so I won't visit you. Upon reading that email, I felt truly sad, hurt, and miserable. It wasn't just that Tom said he couldn't come because he was busy, but that he wouldn't come at all. This made it clear to me that he no longer had any love for me. I thought I shouldn't cry, but tears came uncontrollably. I didn't reply to the email and just cried until morning. 2 days passed. Tom didn't visit, but Sophia diligently showed up after work. That's great, you look a bit better. Are you able to eat? I brought your favorite novel. Sophia's lively visits and smiles saved me. I can't thank her enough. Thank you, Sophia. I'm feeling quite good today. My cough has settled down a lot. The doctor said he might discharge me in about 2 more days. Sophia was really happy and started planning for us to go out and eat something healthy after my discharge. As Sophia and I were discussing where to go, I received an email notification. The subject line read, "Glad I divorced a broke, sick person." Reading the email from Tom over and over, I couldn't understand its meaning and just froze with my phone in hand, my heart racing and my mind in turmoil. You don't earn much, do you? Falling sick without doing any serious work. Don't make me laugh. Wife lottery, a big failure. So I filed for divorce. Take care. Seeing the follow-up email, I laughed unconsciously. It felt like a farce, getting divorced by Tom while hospitalized for asthma. Tears came along with the laughter, and I found myself crying and laughing at the same time. Seeing me like that, Sophia shook my shoulders in a panic. Courtney, what happened? Are you okay? I handed my phone to Sophia, showing her the emails from Tom. As she read the messages, Sophia's face turned red with anger. Look, Courtney, I know you love your husband, and I didn't want to say anything, but maybe it's time to let go. I understood what Sophia meant. Even though she started crying from the emotion, she managed to put her words together. Just divorce him, Courtney. You need to take care of yourself, no matter how much you love him. Sorry to be blunt, but you can't be happy with such a shitty man. Sophia looked sorry, knowing it was not her place to meddle in marital affairs, but I smiled back at her. It's okay, really. I knew deep down that it was impossible to continue, but I lacked the courage to divorce. I always looked away, but it's over now. I'll divorce Tom. When Tom brought up divorce, I was afraid of the separation. I still loved Tom and was scared of how others would react to our divorce. But once I made the decision myself, the fear of divorcing somehow disappeared. I think it's because I could finally think clearly enough to say, let's give up. That's the way to go. Let's enjoy being single again together. Yeah, I feel so much better. Thank you, Sophia. Having you here, I'm really grateful. Courtney, you're my precious friend, of course. But wait, how did he manage to file for divorce without your signature? Sophia's anger flared up again. I explained, when we got married, we prepared divorce papers just in case. It was silly, but we agreed to try to talk through anything and overcome any crisis as a couple. Well, that didn't work out, did it? I could laugh about it, but Sophia didn't seem amused. In disbelief, she said, I see, so he just pulled those out, filled in his part, and submitted them. It might not be a forgery, but it's still appalling. I was afraid of being divorced by Tom in such a state, so I had hidden them in the room. He probably found them and submitted them. Now I'm actually glad he did it. I couldn't decide to divorce Tom because I still loved him, but now it's different. As Tom's feelings for me have vanished, so have mine for him. I'm not foolish enough to keep loving someone who does this to me. Tom still sent one-sided messages. You probably don't have any property, and I don't want to give you any of my money, so we're not dividing any assets. The house is in my name, so get out. I'm being kind by giving you until the end of the month. I don't want to bump into you, so I won't return until after the month is over. Make sure you clean the room before you leave. Honestly, at this point, I was in a what is this guy even thinking state, and the sheer selfishness made me laugh again. I showed the email to Sophia, laughing. Look, Sophia, now I've lost the house too. What should I do? Going back to my parents is too far. I had no intention of staying in that house, and there were my valuable handmade parts to consider. Transporting them would probably fill an entire room. The right size, security, rent. Could I find a perfect place that quickly? While I was pondering, Sophia smiled. Have you forgotten where your best friend works? Don't worry, dear customer, I'll find the perfect room for you. Sorry, I really forgot. That's right, Sophia, please help me. I thanked Sophia. Sophia worked in real estate and was a pro at finding places. I decided to leave everything to Sophia, a capable woman. She brought various property listings to my hospital bed, spreading them out and explaining each one to me. By the time I was discharged, we had managed to find a place close to my preferences, which was a relief. However, I needed certain documents that I couldn't get until after my discharge, so I decided to stay at Sophia's place in the meantime. I'm really sorry I keep causing you trouble, I said. It's okay, Sophia reassured me. I've got good sales, right? I've been here second longest after the manager. Sorry, rental agreements take time because there's a lot of paperwork and an inspection process. You can stay at my place as long as you need until everything is settled. Thank you so much. If there's anything I can do, just let me know. Just take care of yourself for now. Let's take it easy. So, how have things been? Any more contact from your ex-husband? No, not a single word from him. After all, we're strangers now. I do get messages from people from our bank days, though. Apparently, I was branded as a terrible wife. It seems that my ex-husband Tom reported our divorce at his workplace and blamed me for it. He told people I didn't do housework, didn't contribute financially to the household, and yet splurged on my hobbies. He said that any attempt at discussion would end with me getting hysterical and uncontrollable. It's laughable at this point. Who does he think he is to say that? I'd love to remind him who was the one cheating. Sophia seemed to have reached a point where all she could do was laugh. So, what's your plan? You're not going to let this end here, are you? Courtney, what are you going to do? Grinning mischievously, Sophia looked at me, and I couldn't help but smile back. There was no way I was going to let this end here. Tom had his turn doing whatever he pleased, but now it was my turn. Of course, I have no intention of holding back against a man without sincerity and a woman who meddles with a married man. I have quite a few things in mind, so look forward to it. Just you wait, both of you. Enjoy your peaceful newlywed life while you can. 2 days after my successful discharge, Sophia drove me straight to the bank where my ex-husband Tom and his new wife, Michelle, worked. Upon entering the bank, I saw Tom in the back. It had been a while since I last saw him, about a month and a half. I was hospitalized when he filed for divorce. I thought I would be furious seeing him, but I wasn't. I looked for Michelle at the counter, and there she was, sitting with a composed face, the woman who had taken my husband away. I took a number and waited for my turn. Fortunately, I was called to Michelle's counter. She greeted me with a welcome, and I responded with a smile. Hello, I'm sorry to bother you, but I'd like to cancel a bank account. Certainly, is it just one account you wish to cancel? Here we go. I took a deep breath and projected my voice. No, not just one. I'm here to cancel accounts for all 800 employees of my company. The counter buzzed with whispers at my declaration. Tom looked over, shocked at what he saw. He seemed to want to say something, his mouth opening and closing. All 800 accounts. Michelle was flustered at the counter, and I couldn't help but feel a surge of laughter. Canceling 800 salary accounts would be a significant loss for the bank. It's not just about losing deposits. With interest rates being low, banks count on transaction fees and salary transfer fees for their profits. Losing that is a big deal. Yes, all of them. Please proceed. As I handed over the corporate account documents, I made my request. What the hell are you doing, Courtney? Did you just say something about a company? 800 employees? What's that about? Tom approached the counter, causing a stir among the other customers in the bank. Oh, long time no see. How have you been? I said calmly. What do you mean? It's exactly as I said. I have been a company president even when I was married to you. It's a handmade business, as I'm both an artist and a president. I spoke the truth at the counter. You were a president. I didn't know that. You never said anything about that when we were married, did you? No, I didn't. You used to mock me for being a failing handmade artist, right? I earn more than you do. I didn't want to hurt your pride, so I kept it to myself. Michelle, who had no idea who I was, looked at me in shock. She whispered softly, wondering if I was really the person she thought I was. Hello, I'm his ex-wife. Please proceed with the cancellation quickly. Tom and Michelle were frozen, not knowing how to react to the unexpected situation. Then I heard a familiar voice. Miss Courtney, it's been a while. You seem well. There stood Mr. Johnson, my boss before. When I married Tom, he was a strict person, and many of my peers found him difficult. But I liked him. He was as strict with himself as he was with others. When I got married to Tom, Mr. Johnson tearfully wished me happiness. Mr. Johnson, it's been too long. You look well, I said, momentarily forgetting why I was there, happy to see Mr. Johnson. Yes, I'm doing well. Tom told me about the divorce and I've been worried about you. It seems you've been through a lot. How about we talk in the back room while we wait? Of course, these two and I will be there, I said, glancing at Tom and Michelle. Mr. Johnson's gaze was sharp, likely because of my divorce and Tom's remarriage to Michelle. Their faces, which were red a moment ago, turned pale. They seemed to be having a busy day, changing colors like that. I don't mind at all. I'd love to catch up with you, Mr. Johnson. Great. Let's go to the reception room on the 3rd floor. You two, come along, he said. We headed to the 3rd floor where the customer reception room was located. Mr. Johnson opened the door for us and we entered and took our seats. It's really been a long time, Mr. Johnson. I feel regret for meeting under these circumstances, I spoke honestly, and Mr. Johnson smiled back. No worries, I was surprised by the situation, but I'm glad to see you're doing well. I was shocked to hear about the divorce from him and even more so about his quick remarriage. Mr. Johnson glanced at Michelle and continued, and I don't believe the divorce was your fault, as he claimed. Wait a minute, Mr. Johnson. Are you implying that we're to blame? Tom interjected. Is that not the case? If I'm wrong, I apologize. But you see, I've known Courtney for several years. She was always organized, the most meticulous when it came to cleaning. And if I recall correctly, she used to bring homemade lunches every day, right? Mr. Johnson's precise recollection of these details made me feel appreciated for my efforts. Not doing housework, not contributing financially to the household, but spending on hobbies and becoming hysterical during discussions. That's what you've been spreading around as the reason for divorce. But Courtney is not like that. Hearing Mr. Johnson defend me so firmly brought tears to my eyes. It felt overwhelming to have someone who understood, but that's the truth. Tom insisted, you only know her from a work perspective, and you might suspect we had an inappropriate relationship, but that's not true. Yes, that's right. I never cheated, Michelle added. I just couldn't stand seeing Tom so down after his divorce, and while I was cheering him up, he proposed. Michelle said, tears streaming down her face like a tragic heroine. Their blatant lies in front of Mr. Johnson were infuriating. Ridiculous. I was the one who was hurt. I took a document about the thickness of a notebook from my bag. Would you like to see this, Mr. Johnson? You two can look as well. Oh, but perhaps there's no need. You're probably well aware of what's in it. I handed over the investigation report from the detective agency to Mr. Johnson. He took it, smoothly dodging Michelle's attempt to grab it with a scream. Sit down and be quiet, Mr. Johnson commanded sternly. Michelle shrieked and clung to Tom. What is this? You said your wife was too stupid to notice anything. This is not what you told me, Michelle exclaimed. It's not like that. She really is stupid. I never thought she would do something like this, Tom stammered. Calling people stupid too much, aren't you? I was about to retort when Mr. Johnson's furious shout exploded. The idiots here are you two. Cheating on your wife, Tom, and you, Michelle, getting involved with a married man and playing the victim. You two are the offenders and Courtney is the victim. Thank you for saying everything I wanted to say. It feels refreshing. But may I add something? Of course, say it. I won't stop you, Mr. Johnson replied, his strong support empowering me. He nodded at me vigorously and began reading the report with intense focus, his frown deepening. You called me stupid, but do you think a stupid person can run a company? It turns out you were the one with the lesser income. How much was your salary again? $100,000? That's plenty. Tom was so proud of his $100,000 salary, which seemed hilarious to me. Michelle nodded along, seemingly proud as well. Is that so? Well, it's not bad, but mine is $400,000. I have 800 employees, and it's only our 4th year in business. The handmade business you look down on. I started a company with my friends. $400,000. $400,000? Tom and Michelle's faces were priceless. The information that the person they underestimated was actually a company president earning $400,000 was too much for them. Yes, business is booming, so we're planning to hire more staff. I thought it would be beneficial to have our employee accounts with your bank, but there's no need to be considerate anymore. So I'm canceling them all. Wait, just wait a minute. If you cancel, the bank's deposits will decrease. Having salary accounts means potential for housing mortgages and such. It's a big loss for the bank if you cancel, Tom stammered, seemingly forgetting that I used to be a bank employee and that this was basic knowledge for anyone in the field. Yes, I'm aware. It's basic knowledge for a bank employee, isn't it? Are you underestimating me? Why should I be considerate of an ex-husband who cheated and filed for divorce while his wife was hospitalized with asthma? And these two seemed to forget something crucial. I made sure to remind them, and you had an affair within the bank. Do you really think you can continue on the elite path as if nothing happened? You too, Michelle? By the time I looked at Michelle, she had already started crying. Tom, looking down in frustration, suddenly prostrated himself. Please, I'm sorry. Forgive me, it was just a fling, you understand, right? She came on to me strongly, and well, I just went along with it. Michelle screamed at Tom's words. What do you mean by that? Am I the one to blame? You're the one who said there was no love left for your wife, that things weren't working out. Michelle clung to and shook Tom. The drama unfolding before me was so cheap that I couldn't help but laugh. Ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous. Are you kidding me? What value does such a prostration hold, especially when you have no value to begin with? Mr. Johnson took over, his voice dripping with disdain. Exactly. Having seen incontrovertible evidence, I'll make sure you are punished accordingly. Your affair has led to the bank suffering the disadvantage of a mass account cancellation. You seem well aware of the disadvantages of account cancellations, so I assume you have no objections to the punishment. As Mr. Johnson posed the question, Tom could only hang his head low while Michelle cried out loud. I wish they would stop playing the victims until the very end. Leaving their fate in Mr. Johnson's hands, I left the room. By the time our conversation ended, the account cancellations had been completed, and I left the bank feeling refreshed. Later, Mr. Johnson informed me that both had been dismissed for their misconduct. Their affair had resulted in a significant loss of accounts for the bank, which was deemed to have a substantial negative impact. Unemployed, the two struggled to find work, unable to pay their apartment's mortgage, and were turned down when asking friends for money. Interestingly, Tom kept sending me messages and emails begging for reconciliation after divorcing Michelle, all of which I ignored. The laughably pathetic emails were forwarded to Sophia, and we enjoyed a good laugh. I also filed for compensation through a lawyer. Tom had the audacity to claim that since I started my company after our marriage, its assets should be divided between us. Unfortunately for him, the assets in the company's name are exempt from division. I thought divorce would be difficult, but working hard post-divorce has made me realize how happy I am. I even wish I had divorced sooner. Humans are strange creatures. With plenty of money to spend freely and no grievances, I've decided to live my life valuing myself more from now on.
I attempted to whip up a homemade pasta dish with a creamy sauce, hoping to treat everyone to a delightful meal. Please savor it while it's still warm, I urged as I served the plates. However, as the dish reached the table, an unpleasant odor wafted from it, immediately dampening my enthusiasm. Hesitant, I paused before taking the bite. Aren't you going to eat it? Don't you like my cooking? Holly's accusatory tone caught me off guard, her eyes fixed on me as if daring me to criticize. Caught in her unexpected scrutiny, I felt the pressure mounting, but rather than confront her, I discreetly switched my plate with my son Aiden's, hoping to spare him from whatever foul concoction lay before us. As Aiden eagerly dug in, my heart raced with apprehension. Yet to my horror, he soon began to foam at the mouth and collapsed, sending panic rippling through the room. As Holly feigned confusion, I saw through her facade. Anger simmered within me at her malicious intent. Determined to retaliate, I silently vowed to expose her deceit. My name is Susan, and at 62, Life had settled into a quiet routine with my husband after Aiden's marriage. But when Aiden confided in me about his wife's cooking, I initially brushed it off, chastising him for his ingratitude. Yet his unusual reluctance to eat piqued my curiosity, so I extended an invitation for dinner, hoping to bridge the gap with Holly and foster a harmonious relationship. Little did I anticipate the audacity of Holly's actions. When they joined us for dinner, the evening unfolded without incident, leaving me to ponder the unsettling events that had transpired. "I hope it suits your taste, Holly," I ventured as she sampled the dish I had prepared. "It's delicious," she replied, her expression lighting up with satisfaction. Grateful for her approval, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride at her compliment. "I'm glad, thank you," I responded with a smile. Holly continued, expressing her admiration for Aiden's fond memories of my cooking. Her words made me blush with embarrassment and pride all at once. "And I'd also made a dish for you as a gift," Holly announced, placing a large container in the center of the dining table. Curiosity piqued, I inquired about the contents. "Holly, what on earth did you make for us?" "It's a French dish called quiche. Don't you know it?" she replied confidently, opening the container to reveal its contents. However, what greeted us was far from appetizing. The burnt surface and the gooey, undercooked interior emitted a foul odor that made me involuntarily grimace. "You just mix the dough and bake it so it's easy to make," Holly explained, seemingly unfazed by our reactions. Despite my reservations, I timidly picked up my chopsticks to give it a try. But the undercooked dough made me hesitate, and even my husband refrained from taking a bite. Seeing our reluctance, Holly's insistence wavered. "Mother-in-law, aren't you eating it?" she questioned, her tone strained. "I'm sorry, but I feel like it's a bit undercooked. Can we go ahead and reheat it?" I suggested gently, hoping to avoid any offense. Holly's reaction was palpable as she frowned at my critique. "Never mind," she muttered, slamming the container onto the table with a hint of frustration. "I didn't think I'd be treated like this just for burning a dish. Do you think you can do anything just because you're good at cooking?" Holly's frustration simmered as she confronted me. "Holly, calm down before you complain to Mom. Don't you think you should try it yourself?" I interjected, trying to diffuse the tension. "It's easy to make, so I don't need to taste it," Holly retorted, her tone defensive. "But why aren't you eating it either? How can you serve food to people without tasting it yourself?" "Just try it," I urged, realizing my unintentional rudeness. Attempting to mediate, I sought to calm their escalating argument, but Holly remained indignant, her laughter edged with bitterness. Aiden, sensing the tension, apologized and followed her out of the room, leaving me feeling overwhelmed in the silence that followed. "At this rate, she'll think I'm giving her a hard time," I lamented to my husband, contemplating the leftover container before us. "I'm not cocky about being a good cook. I'm just average," I confessed, my concern growing about finding a peaceful resolution. We debated whether to intervene further, ultimately deciding to maintain a distance and let them manage their household affairs. Yet despite our efforts to stay out of it, Holly's visits to her house increased inexplicably. "Mother-in-law, will you please make lunch and put dinner for Aiden in a container to take home?" Holly's sudden request caught me off guard, her presence unaccompanied by Aiden. Surprised by her abrupt visit, I found myself faced with empty containers, tasked with catering to her demands once again. I approached Holly, sensing a shift in her behavior. "Is everything all right? Aiden seems to prefer your cooking, so I thought I'd ask you to make our meals from now on," she stated matter-of-factly. "That's a problem, Holly. Why don't we cook together?" I suggested, hoping to foster a sense of camaraderie. But her response was swift and dismissive. "No, you're just going to make that disgusted face again. You're just giving me a hard time." Her words left me speechless, the divide between us growing wider with each passing moment. Despite my attempts to explain, she seemed resolute in her belief that I was a terrible mother-in-law. Though cooking wasn't a burden, the thought of preparing meals daily for a daughter-in-law who harbored such animosity was daunting. I considered offering to teach her some simple dishes, but she adamantly refused. "You're good at cooking, so just make it for us. And please take care of tomorrow's meal too," she demanded, her tone increasingly brazen. Despite my efforts to reason with her, she only became more obstinate. On days when I declined, she resorted to buying prepared food, causing tension between her and Aiden. "Aiden was spoiled by you, wasn't he? He just gobbles up store-bought food," she complained, her frustration evident. "He's always loved eating since he was young," I defended gently, trying to ease the tension. As the days passed, Holly's visits to her house became more frequent, relying on us for her meals and Aiden's dinner. Eventually, she insisted I make Aiden's lunch and deliver it in the morning, leaving me deeply troubled by the turn of events. I approached Aiden, expressing my concern about Holly's frequent visits. To my surprise, he began offering money for their meals to avoid her cooking altogether. If you're willing to spend that much, why not encourage Holly to learn to cook? I suggested, hoping for a compromise. But Holly refused, citing hurt feelings. As tensions mounted, another conflict erupted when Holly discovered Aiden's financial contributions toward our food expenses. "Why are you paying your mother? Is this supposed to be an allowance?" I didn't agree to this, Holly protested, her frustration palpable. "It's because you're making my mom cook for us. What's wrong with paying for our food?" Aiden retorted, trying to justify his actions. Despite our efforts to resolve the issue, Holly remained adamant, viewing our actions as a slight against her. No matter how much we tried to reason with her, Holly refused to listen, insisting that not eating her cooking constituted harassment. Feeling caught in the middle, I decided to step back from cooking for them, hoping it would bring some resolution, albeit temporary. However, Holly remained displeased, and I realized it was futile to continue intervening. Reluctantly, I urged them to resolve their differences on their own. Weeks later, on a calm afternoon, Holly visited again, but this time, Aiden was by her side. The unexpected sight left me on edge as I greeted them at the entrance, uncertain of what lay ahead. "I want you to teach me how to cook." Holly finally agreed to listen to reason. "Please, just this once," I implored, relieved that our discussion had led to a positive outcome. Together, we made our way to the kitchen, where Holly arrived with her own ingredients, displaying a newfound motivation. However, to my surprise, she insisted on working alone and promptly ushered me and Aiden out of the kitchen. Confused, we exchanged worried glances, but Holly remained firm in her decision. "I can't concentrate if I'm not alone," she explained, refusing to entertain our assistance. As we anxiously waited, Holly called us back into the living room after just a few minutes. With a sense of anticipation, she served us pasta she had made in the kitchen. Though the pasta seemed hastily prepared, I hesitated to voice my concerns. But as I began to mix it with my fork, I noticed foreign objects in the cream sauce, remnants that resembled herbs but emitted an unusual scent reminiscent of air freshener. Aiden, however, seemed undeterred as he eagerly sampled the dish. "It's delicious," he exclaimed with surprise, his enthusiasm palpable. Encouraged by his reaction, Holly beamed with pride. "Wow, it's good. Holly, you've learned to make this kind of food," he praised, his words filled with admiration. "I always cook properly. Look, even my mother-in-law. There's no way she wouldn't eat it," Holly asserted confidently. "Mom, it's fine. It's just a normal pasta," Aiden reassured, though his comment would typically provoke Holly's fury. However, she appeared indifferent and urged me to eat quickly. Despite her insistence, the stronger the strange smell became as I mixed it, the more hesitant I felt. "Why won't you eat it?" Holly questioned, suspicion creeping into her voice. "So, my mother-in-law just wanted to mess with me, right?" "That's not true. It's just that," I began, but was interrupted by Holly's ringing phone. She hastily excused herself from the table, leaving the room. Seizing the moment, I urged Aiden to secretly exchange the pasta. He complied, happily indulging in a second serving. But within moments, he recoiled and collapsed, foaming at the mouth. I couldn't contain my shock, letting out a scream. "What happened? Why did Aiden collapse?" I cried out. Hearing my distress, Holly rushed back into the room, her concern evident as she knelt by Aiden's side. As I dialed for an ambulance, Holly appeared bewildered and asked what had happened to Aiden. Once Aiden was rushed to the hospital and had his stomach pumped, my husband and I arrived, relieved to see him lying on the hospital bed. But before we could express our concern, Holly questioned Aiden about the incident, echoing her earlier confusion when he collapsed. "Hey, why did Aiden collapse? How come?" she demanded, her agitation palpable. "Ollie, please calm down," my husband interjected, attempting to diffuse the tension. But Holly's accusatory tone persisted. "It should have been you. Did you force Aiden to eat it?" "What on earth are you talking about, Holly? What did you do?" I pressed, bewildered by her accusations. Holly's response was shocking. "You insulted my cooking, so I thought I'd get back at you," she admitted, her tone laced with bitterness. Get back at me, I exclaimed, incredulous. It's also my mother-in-law's fault that Aiden won't eat my cooking. Aiden has always been on her side. Though neither Aiden nor I intended to hurt her feelings, Holly remained steadfast in her accusations. That's why I thought everything would be peaceful if my mother-in-law wasn't around, she continued, unapologetic. It became evident that Holly had indeed tampered with the pasta she served me, as the white residue turned out to be detergent. Thankfully, no serious harm was done, but the situation could have been far worse. Though Aiden should have noticed the strong smell, I couldn't ignore Holly's reckless actions. If you're saying it would be better if I wasn't around, then all you needed to do was try harder at cooking, I retorted, exasperated by her lack of remorse. But if he were still alive, Aiden would always be on your side, wouldn't he? Holly countered, her unapologetic and unreflective attitude leaving me at a loss for words. Disappointed, I let out a heavy sigh, my shoulders slumping in defeat. Beside me, my husband shook his head in quiet dismay, realizing the extent of Holly's misguided actions. That's enough, Holly, I said firmly, attempting to rein in her childish rebuttal. I'd like to have a talk with your parents as well. Why? She protested, her confusion evident. Because talking to you won't get us anywhere, I explained, resolved to involve her parents in the discussion. After Aiden's safe recovery and discharge from the hospital, we convened a meeting with Holly's parents. Though Holly was initially resistant, I persisted, arranging the gathering and initiating the conversation. I deeply apologize for the tremendous trouble our daughter has caused you, Holly's mother, Kate, expressed remorsefully upon our meeting. Oh no, it's something my mother needs to apologize for, Holly interjected defensively. Kate's stern glare silenced her, prompting Holly to bow her head in contrition. Throughout the discussion, Kate's strict demeanor raised questions about Holly's behavior. We'll cover the medical expenses, and if there's anything else she can do to make amends, please let us know, Holly's father offered, attempting to rectify the situation. But Holly refused to relent. Stop it. I'm not paying any money, she protested defiantly. Turning to her, I asked the question that had been weighing on my mind. Holly, can you tell me why you did such a thing? At the hospital, I confronted Holly about her accusations. It's because Aiden only ever takes your side, she insisted, continuing to blame me for mocking her cooking and for the circumstances that led me to take over cooking duties. Unable to bear her attitude any longer, I revealed a certain photograph to Kate, her mother. What is this? Kate asked, visibly shaken as she examined the dish Holly had brought to our house, claiming it was a quiche. You served such a terrible thing to someone else, Kate scolded Holly harshly, her disappointment evident. With no defense left, Holly hung her head in silence as the lecture continued, leaving us no chance to intervene. Eventually, Holly admitted to everything, revealing her belief that if she could get me hospitalized, she wouldn't have to take care of me. The absurdity of her logic left me reeling. I'm sorry, but I can't continue our married life after being subjected to something like this, Aiden declared, his frustration evident. Why not? It's not my fault. You shouldn't have taken your mother's side, Holly retorted, her defiance crumbling under the weight of Aiden's words. You be quiet. You could be turned over to the police for this, I interjected, watching as Holly paled at the mention of the authorities. Though there was some trouble regarding compensation and hospital fees, Kate promised to make Holly pay, de-escalating the situation. Though Holly initially acted like a child, she seemed to reflect on her actions after Aiden broke up with her. Later, Anne discovered that Holly's parents, whom she claimed not to get along with, were actually professional chefs. Seemingly rebelling against their strict culinary standards, Holly had adopted unorthodox cooking methods after getting married. Learning of her parents' anger and the so-called bridal training she was undergoing, I realized the importance of teaching my son basic household chores. Aiden, appreciating the privilege of having someone cook for him, began making simple dishes on his own, sometimes joining me to cook meals together. Surprisingly, my husband also became interested in cooking, and the three of us now enjoy cooking together with occasional role reversals where they handle the cooking while I relax.
I confronted my husband with the evidence from the detective agency. His face was a mask of resolve as he said, Roy and I have been having an affair. I'm in love with her, and I've decided to be with her. You need to leave. Is this really what you want? I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. It doesn't matter what happens next, he replied, his tone unyielding. I took a deep breath and thought about my own life. My name is Amy. I'm 37 years old and work in an office. I live with my husband Ted and our 5-year-old daughter Katie. We're close and support each other through our shortcomings. For now, we're happy as a family. Ted is a fantastic cook and always prepares dinner for us. Since I often work late and put in a lot of overtime, I truly appreciate that Ted handles the housework. One day, my husband sustained an unexpected ligament injury. He decided to play basketball with friends for the first time in ages, pushing himself to make a shot despite not having exercised regularly since starting his job. Although he's 5 years younger than me at 32, his lack of fitness showed. It made no sense for him to act so recklessly, especially with a job and a child to consider. When we were dating, his impulsiveness seemed exciting and new, but now it feels like a major flaw. The injury has landed him in the hospital, requiring him to take time off work. That means I'll have to handle the housework and look after our child alone. Adding to the frustration, the injury occurred at a multi-sport facility, not even a proper basketball court. The company could be outraged if they found out, and he might even face termination. I felt a surge of anger and disillusionment. His irresponsible behavior as an adult has become a serious burden. The doctor said he'll need to stay in the hospital for about 2 weeks. I brought him a change of clothes, a phone charger, and other essentials. "Thanks for bringing these, Amy," he said, his voice unusually upbeat. I couldn't hide my frustration. "Why are you so cheerful? Normally you'd be more upset." "Well, what can I do? It was an accident. Plus, I'll use my paid vacation days, so it'll be fine." "Fine. If it weren't for your injury, you could have saved those vacation days for something important like our daughter's kindergarten event or a family trip. That's what they're meant for. Now your coworkers and bosses will have to pick up the slack because you can't come to work. As for our daughter, I'm grateful my mom could step in and help with her. Without her, I wouldn't be able to manage my overtime, and it would create more problems at work. You need to realize the impact of your actions on everyone around you." I must have been really angry because my complaints just spilled out. My husband looked regretful and said, "I'm sorry." "Maybe I overreacted a bit," I admitted, trying to calm down. I told him get better soon, and left the hospital room. Whether my husband was there or not, my work was still incredibly busy. I planned to ask my mother to continue taking care of our daughter for a bit longer. However, when my boss and co-workers learned about my husband's hospitalization, they insisted I didn't need to work overtime. Thanks to their support, I was able to leave work on time, come home early, cook dinner, and enjoy a meal with my daughter. I didn't have to lean too much on my mother, and I was truly grateful for the kindness of my colleagues. A week later, after finishing work, I took my mother and daughter to visit my husband. As we entered his hospital room, I heard him laughing heartily along with a woman's voice. "Oh my God, Ted. Who's that?" I wondered if the woman was one of his colleagues or perhaps a junior from work. When we entered the hospital room, we found a young, slim, and quite attractive nurse there. "Oh, it's your wife and your lovely daughter," she said, giving us a polite bow before leaving the room. "While I'm juggling everything, you're here chatting with a beautiful nurse so casually," I said, my frustration evident. My husband, noticing my icy demeanor, appeared visibly uneasy. "Thanks for coming," he said, attempting to ease the tension. Fortunately, my daughter's presence softened the moment. "Hi, Dad," she said, hugging him tightly and beaming with joy at seeing him for the first time in a week. "Katie, I missed you so much. Is your leg feeling better?" "Now that you're here, Katie, everything will be okay, so you'll be coming home soon." "Yes, I will." "Yay!" Seeing my daughter so happy lifted my spirits as well. I decided to let the scolding wait for another time. After our visit, my mother mentioned that young nurse was calling his name in such a friendly way. "Yeah, she was," I agreed. Her tone did sound quite intimate. Although I found it hard to believe my husband would actually pursue anything with a young, attractive nurse, the thought lingered. Maybe she was looking for someone to be interested in her. They say nurses don't meet many men, so she could be quite forward. Finally, after 2 weeks in the hospital, my husband was discharged. On the day of his release, I visited his room and found him chatting cheerfully with that attractive nurse once again. On the drive home, he seemed unusually bored. I would have expected him to be more enthusiastic about leaving the hospital. This struck me as odd, so I decided to hire a detective agency to investigate. The results came swiftly. After his discharge, he was supposed to go to the hospital for rehabilitation. However, his leg was already healed, and he was lying about needing rehab. Instead, he was visiting the nurse's house. I was stunned. How could my husband be having an affair with her? Or beautiful nurses really drawn to such situations? I confronted my husband with the evidence from the detective agency. He didn't hesitate, saying, "Yes, I'm having an affair. I'm in love with her. I'm going to be with her, and you need to leave. I don't care what happens. I'm in love with her. Fine, do whatever you want. This is absurd," I replied. I packed my things, took my daughter, and went to stay with my parents. When I told my mother what had happened, she was furious. "Knew something wasn't right," she said. "Your instincts were spot on, Mom," I acknowledged. After that, I finalized the divorce with the help of a lawyer, securing alimony and my share of the property. We had some disagreements over the division of assets, but I managed to get what I was entitled to and received the funds I deserved. With that, I felt completely free from my past and ready to start anew with my daughter. But as I began my new life, I started receiving numerous calls from an unknown number. Initially, I ignored them, but their persistence eventually got the better of me. "Hello." Finally, you answer. "Who is this?" I demanded. "Well, who are you?" "I'm Anna, Ted's new wife." "Oh, the woman he cheated with. So what do you want?" "You demanded an excessive amount in alimony and property division from my husband. I had a lawyer determine a fair amount." "Then why does he need to sell the house to pay it?" "That's because his salary isn't high enough." "How can his salary be low if he works for a foreign invested company?" "What are you talking about?" "I'm the one working for a foreign invested company, not him." "What do you mean?" "I'm sure my husband lied to you to make himself look better. I often complained to him about my job and the issues I faced, so he probably used that information to mislead you. The truth is, he's just a regular employee at a small company with a salary that's about half of mine." "That's a scam." He claimed he worked for a foreign invested company and that he owned the house outright. But the house is actually in both our names and I made the down payment, so if he wants to stay in the house after the divorce, he'll need to pay me half of its appraised value. "Oh no. He's not handsome, doesn't have money, and there's nothing appealing about him." "Well, I suppose he wasn't attractive enough for an affair. He was a good dad though." "Care how good he is with kids. He cheated on me." "I'm sorry to hear that, but you'd better make sure you pay your alimony. If you don't, I'll come after you." Soon after, I received a call from my ex-husband. He was upset because his affair partner had left him just before their wedding. It turned out she had dumped him. But he was the one who lied and tried to impress a beautiful nurse, so he brought this on himself. I told him that if he wanted to address his problems, he should start by earning as much as I do. Then I ended the call. Since then, I only see my ex-husband when my daughter wants to visit him. Each time he sees me, he complains about his situation. I've heard that his injury from playing basketball has caused significant issues at work. His boss is furious, and it seems he'll never get promoted. Honestly, he brought this on himself. Meanwhile, I'm back home, working diligently while my parents help me raise my daughter. Their support allows me to save for her education and take weekend trips with my family. Although I was concerned that the divorce might affect my daughter negatively, She continues to smile just as sweetly as ever. I'm committed to working hard to keep her happy. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.
Hey, I need to talk to you about something, I said, gathering my courage. Can we cut back on having your mom over every weekend? My husband let out a deep sigh. Lisa, it feels like you're always saying no to everything. What do you mean by that? I asked, a bit taken aback. You don't want me to build a house. You don't want my mom coming over. You're always against something. That's not what I meant. I tried to explain. Then what did you mean? How much longer do we have to keep waiting? My name is Lisa, and I've been married to Frank for 5 years. We share a common dream, owning our own home. Now that we've saved enough for a down payment, we're finally ready to leave behind renting and move into the home I've always envisioned. Once we're settled, we plan to start a family and raise our children in a place that truly belongs to us. But just as our hopes were growing, a dark cloud appeared on the horizon. My mother-in-law, who had caught wind of our plans, began making some rather unsettling moves. So, I hear you're finally buying a house, she said. Yes, that's right, I replied. Have you already decided on what kind of home you want? Yes, I have an idea of what we want, I said. That's wonderful. If there's anything I can do to help, just let me know. Thank you, I appreciate that. Oh, by the way, have you checked out the showroom near your house? No, we haven't managed to get an appointment there yet, I replied. Well, I'll take care of that for you. We can go together. Actually, I prefer to go with just my husband, I said, trying to be polite. Despite my efforts, my mother-in-law continued to involve herself in our property search. She even started showing up unannounced. I brought you a brochure for some land that's for sale, she said one day, catching me off guard. Thank you very much. My mother-in-law held a dozen leaflets in her hand, eager to share them. How about this one? It's close to the station and spacious enough for 2 families. Wait, did she just say 2 families? I was too stunned to respond, and she continued talking as if nothing was amiss. If the train station isn't nearby, it's inconvenient for everything, and you'll want to be close to a hospital for when you get older. This property is also near a supermarket. It must be hard for you to choose with so many options, right? What started as an offer to help quickly turned into her taking control of the house search. She was making decisions as if she planned to live there too. This is not good at all. I told my husband everything that had happened that night. Oh, I think she might have mentioned something about living together, he said casually. What? You want us all to live together? I asked, surprised. Well, if you're okay with it, I'm not going to push you into anything, don't worry. I felt blindsided by his response. If I'm okay with it? No, I'm not. I couldn't believe he was being so indecisive. When it's time to tell my mother-in-law that we're not living together, I'm going to be the one dealing with the fallout. Why can't he see that? Maybe we should stop building the house, I suggested, feeling frustrated. What? Why? He asked, clearly confused. Because of the way you phrased it. If I refuse to live with her, she'll know I was the one who said no. We're going to be together for a long time, and I don't want things to become awkward. I'd rather not have a house if it means dealing with that. We can raise our kids in a rental and use the down payment we save for their education instead. My husband's panic was evident. Wait a minute, I understand now. I'll tell her no, and we'll move forward with building the house. No, it's fine. You can't even stand up to your mother. I'd never seen him stand up to his mother before. Trust me, I'll handle it, he said, trying to reassure me. Why are you so desperate? He asked, sounding puzzled. I want to live in our own house and raise our children there, I replied. You didn't seem so enthusiastic about it before. That's not true. I was excited. It's hurtful to say otherwise. I feel just as strongly about our children. All right, I understand. My husband promised he would tell his mother no, but given his usual hesitation, I doubted he'd follow through. However, the day after our conversation, my mother-in-law stopped pressuring us and even called to apologize. Lisa, I got scolded by Frank. He told me he wants to live with you alone. I'm sorry for pushing my opinions on you, my mother-in-law said. I was surprised to hear that Frank had actually stood up to her. He could speak his mind when it mattered. Still, I couldn't shake a lingering suspicion. When I told my husband about the apology, he had a satisfied grin on his face. See? When I say I'll speak up, I mean it. What's with that look in your eyes? I asked, puzzled. I was wondering if you really told her, I said, still unsure. Are you doubting me? Isn't that awful? He replied, hurt. I haven't seen you stand up to your mother in 5 years, and you didn't do it in front of me. That's unfair. I tried so hard. You're right, I'm sorry. But you're sweating like crazy. What's going on? Oh, it's just hot. Isn't it a bit warm today? It's the middle of winter. By the way, let's finalize the house contract. You really want to build this house, don't you? Of course I do. That's what we've been saving for. At this point, I had lost interest in building the new house, the dream home I had worked so hard to save for. My enthusiasm had dwindled due to my mother-in-law's behavior and my husband's attitude, making me feel as if all my efforts had been in vain. I found myself stepping back from the idea. Meanwhile, my husband continued to insist on building the house. 6 months had passed since our dispute, and although he kept talking about it, I remained unconvinced. My mother-in-law, who had been quiet, was now growing impatient. She started visiting our house frequently. While she never mentioned the house, her attitude became increasingly arrogant. Both my husband and I work full-time, and we both have weekends off. Lately, my mother-in-law has been coming over to our house every weekend. I could manage if it were just once a month, but her frequent visits are making me uncomfortable. My husband seems to be quite pleased with the arrangement, but it's becoming a problem for me. I'd like to have some peace on Saturdays and Sundays, but she arrives at 7 in the morning and blasts the TV at an incredibly loud volume. If I try to stay in bed, she paces back and forth in front of my room. My husband is busy taking care of her, which should be enough. When I finally gave in and got up at 7:30, she remarked, "How can you sleep in with a guest over? She stays until late on Sunday night, and it's starting to wear me down." My husband remains silent about his mother's behavior, and whenever I think of him, the word divorce crosses my mind. However, I want to avoid that if at all possible. I needed to find a way to improve the situation. "Hey, I need you to stop having your mother over every weekend," I said, expressing my feelings directly. He let out a deep sigh. "Lisa, you always seem to be against everything." "What do you mean by that?" "You don't want to build a house, you don't want my mother visiting. You're against everything." "That's not how I meant it." "Then what did you mean? How long do we have to wait for?" "You just said we. What did you mean by that?" "Who else is waiting?" I asked, confused. "What do you mean?" "You said we just now," I clarified. My husband's face turned red and he began to sweat. "I didn't say that. Maybe I misheard. But we can't build a house if your mother keeps coming over every weekend like this." "Why not?" "Because I can't relax. If my parents came over every weekend, would you be able to rest?" "Your parents won't come. They have such a nice house." "I'm fed up with this nonsense," I said, frustrated. "That's not the issue here," he retorted. "I don't even care about the house anymore. I'm going to invite my parents to stay with us next week." My husband's voice rose. "Absolutely not." "Why not?" "Because it's too exhausting. Don't invite your parents. My mother is the only one who can visit. This is my house too. I'm the head of the house. If you can't follow my rules, then leave." "Are you serious?" "You're completely useless to me. I'm done with you. You can't make my mother happy, and if we can't build a house, she can't live with us." "You promised she wouldn't live with us." "What are you talking about? Once the house was built, we could do whatever we wanted, including having my mother live with us." "What do you mean?" "I've told you this before, and you still don't understand. I planned to have my mother move in once the house was built." I knew it. My mother-in-law didn't back down easily. My husband was plotting with her all along. "I see now. All right, I'll leave." "I hope you won't regret this," he said. "Of course not. Just don't come near me again," I replied firmly. I packed only the essentials and went to my parents' house. They were taken aback by my sudden arrival, but once I explained what had happened, they welcomed me with open arms. "This is what family is for, right? I suppose our relationship was damaged from the start when I couldn't trust my husband," I said. "Dad, I'm so sorry," I added, feeling the weight of my actions. "I understand things didn't work out between you two, but work and personal life are separate issues." "Yes, I agree. So my ex-husband and I are now divorced. There were no money claims or financial disputes, just a straightforward division of property. But 3 months have passed, and now my ex-husband is on his knees in front of me. "I'm sorry, father-in-law," he says. I'm not your father anymore. Be careful what you call me. Boss, is this a result of me divorcing your daughter? What are you talking about? Why did my ex-husband come all the way to my parents' house and get down on his knees? It's because he received an unwanted transfer. Both of us worked for my father's company, and he seems to believe the transfer was a consequence of our divorce. However, my father made it clear during the divorce that personal matters had no bearing on work decisions. All employees at his company are assigned to regional posts for a few years to enhance their skills, and transfers are never used as a form of punishment. But that explanation doesn't seem to satisfy my ex-husband. Lisa, you need to stop the boss. I thought you told me never to show my face again. I'm sorry, please, he begged. No, this isn't an obligation. I was once in line to be the next president, remember? I can't believe you interrupted me with such nonsense. You're mistaken. I'm still the next president, regardless of our divorce. What? Of course, I'm his daughter. My ex-husband nodded and left our house. The next day, he submitted his resignation, despite people around him trying to explain that the transfer wasn't a demotion. He refused to listen. A few days later, he was found in an unexpected place. I was casually watching a documentary on TV when I saw my ex-husband featured on the program. He appeared in line at a volunteer organization for a meal donation, looking disheveled and poorly dressed. Life can be unpredictable. It made me reconsider the word regret that I once said to him. I'm sure he regrets his actions now. The fact that he was holding 2 meal containers suggested that one was meant for his mother. Although I don't know all the details, it's clear that his life has drastically changed from what it once was. As for me, I'm thriving on my own. My weekdays are filled with work, but I relish my days off. It's a true blessing to sleep soundly without morning disruptions. I am living in a state of happiness and contentment. It was the unexplained coldness of her ex-husband that had caused her so much pain, a pain she struggled to convey to others. She wished she could use that experience as a shield to say no to her in-laws. Lisa, you did an excellent job. I hope you're able to enjoy your time on your own now. My name is Molly, and I'm 32 years old. I'm married to Justin, who is 35 and works in an office. I work as a freelance fashion designer from home. My career started with many small, exciting projects. But it wasn't until I landed a significant project with a substantial paycheck that things really changed. This opportunity allowed Justin and me to move into a luxurious high-rise apartment, something I had always wanted. Since I was the one who had dreamed of living in such a place, I agreed to cover the monthly rent myself. Justin was thrilled about the new apartment, and I thought our future together looked bright. I couldn't have anticipated what was about to happen next. One day, Justin brought his 65-year-old mother, Betty, to our place. Her husband had passed away 3 years ago, and she had been living alone since then. Hi, Molly, Betty greeted me. Hi, Betty, it's been a while. What's going on? Well, Justin began awkwardly, she wants to move in with us. Why? I asked, surprised. Justin explained that Betty's house was deteriorating, and she wanted to move to a better place. She didn't have much money, so she hoped to stay with us temporarily. I understood the situation but wasn't thrilled about it. Our apartment was a haven for just the two of us, and Betty, whom I barely knew, felt like a stranger. I was reluctant to have her join us. Please, Justin said, taking my hands. Her house is falling apart. I promise I'll urge her to find a smaller, newer place as soon as possible. Reluctantly, I agreed, thinking it would only be for a short while. A month later, Betty moved in. Thank you so much for letting me stay in this wonderful apartment, she said. No problem, I replied with a forced smile. Please make yourself at home. But soon after settling in, Betty approached me with an unexpected request. Sorry to dive right in, but may I borrow some money? I was taken aback. As soon as she had unpacked her things, she was asking me for money. I was taken aback by Betty's directness. I've been seeing the doctor a lot lately, and it's been costing me money. I just need a little bit, please. How much are you asking for? I inquired. Around $300 for now, she said. Given her age, it wasn't surprising that she might be facing health issues, and I could understand that medical expenses could add up quickly. I reached into my purse, found $650, and handed it to her. Then, one day, Justin came to me with a request. I was unsettled, fearing it might be related to Betty. You know, we should get a new car, he said. I was so surprised that I nearly fell out of my chair. What do you mean? We just bought a car 2 years ago. Well, it's too small, Justin explained. I couldn't understand why the size of the car mattered. It was sufficient for the two of us, or three if you counted Betty. Why did the size need to change? My mom doesn't like it, Justin added. I was baffled. Why was Betty complaining about a car that wasn't hers? She wants a more luxurious car, like a Mercedes, Justin said. I was completely lost. Changing cars for such a trivial reason seemed unreasonable. Besides, could Betty even drive? I'm not buying an expensive car. Tell her it's not happening, I said firmly. At the time, it was clear to me that this request made no sense. Betty's complaints about the car seemed to never end, and soon she came to me again, asking for money. My medical bills have become more expensive and I'm falling behind on payments. Could you help me out again? She pleaded. Should I be concerned about your health? I asked, worried. Betty hesitated before responding. Not really. I'm just feeling a bit depressed and having trouble sleeping. The therapist is quite costly. I'm really sorry for asking. I understand. How much do you need this time? I asked. About $1,000, she said. $1,000. I was taken aback. The amount seemed excessive for therapy, though I wasn't well versed in the costs. I'm sorry, I said, but my insurance only covers a limited number of sessions fully, and after that, I have to pay half of the charges. I see, Betty replied. I'll get it by tomorrow. Despite my shock at the amount, I tried to rationalize it, thinking perhaps there were high costs associated with the therapy. Even after that, Betty continued to find reasons to borrow more money, citing medical bills and transportation costs for visiting sick friends. By the time I realized, the total amount she had borrowed had reached $5,000. Although my job was going well, I was becoming increasingly frustrated. That's when I noticed something strange. One day, I couldn't help but peek into Betty's room. To my shock, I found designer bags and wallets neatly displayed on a shelf. I was stunned. How could she afford such luxurious items when she claimed to be struggling financially? She had borrowed so much money from me. Yet her room was filled with expensive goods. I grew increasingly suspicious of the medical bills she'd been asking for. A month later, Betty approached me again, asking for more money with no hint of remorse. Can you please wait? She said casually. I decided it was time to confront her. I called Justin, who seemed unaware of the situation. I need to ask you about Betty, I said. What exactly is she using the money for? What's going on, Molly? Justin asked, clearly confused. Betty mumbled something about therapy sessions and prescriptions, but I pressed further. And what about the designer clothes, bags, and other items? Are you really seeing a therapist? Of course, Betty replied, but her hesitation was clear. If that's the case, show me the receipts. You must have them, right? I demanded. Cornered by my questioning, Betty was at a loss for words. It became evident that she wasn't using the money for her well-being but for something else entirely. Justin, still puzzled, asked, Wait, what are you guys talking about? Betty has been spending the money she borrowed from me, more than $5,000, on luxury items, I explained. Even so, you're being too aggressive. Can you talk to her more gently? Justin said, his loyalty clearly lying with his mother. In other words, he was a mama's boy. I don't have receipts, Betty admitted. I have been shopping and dining out with friends. I was taken aback. You seem so relaxed despite claiming to be broke. You didn't seem depressed at all. If you've been lying, you need to pay me back immediately. Betty's eyes were full of desperation. I can't come up with that amount right away. Frustrated, I pointed to the designer items in her room. Sell all of those things. If you can't, then move out. Justin, ever the defender, intervened. Hey, you're being unfair. She deserves a little luxury too. I wouldn't call it luxury, I shot back. More than $5,000 has been squandered. This feels like a scam. Justin countered, you're being disrespectful. Just because you're paying the rent doesn't give you the right to be so arrogant. If you're unhappy, then you can leave, he said. What? I was incredulous. I was reaching my boiling point. Steam seemed about to burst from my ears as I glared at him. Did I say anything wrong? You're the one who brought Betty here in the first place. You do nothing but lounge around at home. Thanks to you, I'm stuck living with this mess. You're so condescending, it's infuriating. Get out now, I snapped. Rage consumed me. Fine. Don't regret this, Justin said, grabbing only the essentials and leaving the apartment. I found a new place quickly. As a remote worker, I could do my job from anywhere. I wasn't fixated on living in a high-rise as long as my new home was comfortable. So now, what was next? I had no intention of returning to that place. I had been covering the rent on my own, and I assumed Justin had no interest in taking over. Even if he wanted to, his paycheck wouldn't be enough to cover it. My income far exceeded his. I consulted with a realtor who had assisted me before. I explained that, due to personal reasons, it had become very difficult to manage the monthly rent. Although I could technically afford it, I chose to downplay my situation. "I'm sorry to hear that. What would you like to do?" the realtor asked. I asked for his help with the situation. One day, while I was working, I received a call from Justin. "What's going on?" I answered, puzzled. "Why didn't you tell me?" Justin demanded. "I was told to move out because the lease was canceled." "Yes, I asked the property agent to break the lease," I explained. "Since I don't live there anymore, I don't see why I should continue paying the rent." "But my mom and I still live there," Justin protested. I was stunned. "What? That's absurd. I don't live there, so why should I keep covering the apartment? If you're in trouble, you should talk to your mom and maybe sell some of her things to raise the money," I suggested. I was incredulous and frustrated. It seemed Justin's sense of entitlement had no bounds. I spoke with a hint of sarcasm. "Well, you were the one who wanted to live in a high-rise. If you're not ready to move, why don't you take over the lease yourself?" "Oh wait, you probably can't afford it with your salary." Justin seemed at a loss for words. "You know, you should be able to manage a modest apartment. So go ahead and deal with it. Move in with your mom." "Are you kidding me?" I retorted. "My mom has already used up her savings from selling her house. I don't have any extra funds myself. How do you expect me to find a new place?" "That's not my problem," he replied. I couldn't understand how he still had no savings when he had been relying on my income. The entitlement and irresponsibility of both him and his mother were astounding. "You've brought this upon yourselves with your foolishness," I said. "From now on, figure it out on your own." "Are you saying we should be homeless? You're still my wife," Justin pleaded. "I've told you, figure it out elsewhere. I'm done with this. Goodbye." I hung up the phone. A few minutes later, my phone rang again. It was Betty. "Mally, I'm really sorry," she said, her voice trembling. "I will pay you back, so please don't kick us out." Her tearful plea surprised and saddened me. I didn't want to lecture her, but I felt I needed to explain. "You should live within your means. If you only have a small retirement income, you should adjust your lifestyle accordingly. If you want a higher standard of living, you need to work for it." I knew the harsh reality as a freelancer. If I wanted a certain quality of life, I had to work hard and earn it rather than relying on others. "I understand," Betty said. "I'm sorry. Please don't let us end up on the street." "I'm sorry," I replied, my voice softening. "But you need to manage your finances better." The apartment had already been leased to someone else. "You really need to move out," I told Betty coldly. "This is a matter of regulation." I ended the call with finality. Later, the realtor informed me that Justin and Betty had pleaded with him to keep the lease, but he told them that a new tenant was moving in soon and they had to leave. Even if they had stayed, Justin's salary would have been swallowed up by the rent, leaving them unable to afford anything else. It was absurd for them to expect me to continue supporting their living situation while Justin relied on me. His outbursts had pushed things past the point of no return. I was frustrated and resolved that this was the end. Justin and Betty were left without an apartment and were moving from one motel to another because they couldn't afford the broker's fee or deposit, and no one was willing to be their guarantor. Betty had worked only briefly, so her Social Security payments were minimal, and they were struggling even to eat. I felt they had brought this upon themselves. On my end, I secured another major project and became more financially stable. Looking back on our marriage, I realized that depending solely on a partner, financially or otherwise, is unsustainable. It leads to significant pain when things fall apart. Justin and I separated for a while and eventually divorced. Our feelings had cooled, and there was no reason to stay together. Now that we're estranged, I feel a sense of relief. If I were to marry again, I'd be more discerning. The divorce taught me valuable lessons about life and relationships, and I plan to take my time finding the right partner.